Well, good morning and welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Akam. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning, and we have a lot to talk about this morning. We're going to be talking about the No Kings rally, Iran, New York State issues. First, a security scare at Palm Beach International Airport yesterday prompted the Air Force to scramble F-16 fighter jets and deploy flares hours before Air Force One was slated to fly President Trump back to D.C. Authorities imposed a ground stop at the airport as they rushed to confront the civilian aircraft. The White House said that the security scare took place after authorities lost communication with a general aviation plane. The civilian aircraft violated the temporary flight restriction at approximately 1:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. The aircraft was safely escorted out of the area by NORAD aircraft. The Defense Visual Information Distribution Service explained in a statement shared by the North American Aerospace Defense Command, which controls the airspace over the U.S. and Canada. Quote, the flares were used to draw attention from or communicate with the pilot. Flares are employed with the highest regard to safety, burn out quickly and completely, and pose no danger to people on the ground. The White House and Secret Service said that neither Air Force One nor Trump was in danger. A general aviation aircraft was briefly out of communication with the air traffic control tower at Palm Beach International Airport, but contact was ultimately established and the ground stop was lifted, said the White House. There was no drone incursion or concern regarding Air Force One, which is not slated to take off until the evening. The president was at Trump International Golf Course during the time of the security incident at Palm Beach International Airport. Initial reports suggest that some of the drone incursion at the airport triggered the ground stop, with footage showing a Delta pilot informing passengers of the security scare. The pilot claimed that they had to scramble some helicopters to go investigate. All right, that's a breaking story from last night. Also, speaking of, I guess you could say, air, Vice President J.D. Vance speculated that UFOs could actually be demons flying around Earth, contending that ancient civilizations believed they had encounters with such vile creatures. Quote, I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway. But that's a long discussion, he told Betty Johnson. I mean, every great world religion, including Christianity, the one I believe in, has understood there are weird things out there. When I hear about an extra-natural phenomenon, that's where I go. The Christian understanding that there's a lot of good out there, but there's also evil out there. I think that's one of the devil's great tricks, is to convince people he never existed. Notably, right-wing pundit Tucker Carlson, if you want to call him right-wing, had conveyed similar beliefs about unified anomalous phenomenons being demons rather than aliens. Tucker also claimed to have been attacked in the middle of the night by a demon and left with claw marks while sleeping next to his wife and dog. Vance, who converted to Catholicism in 2019, underscored his obsession with UAPs and vowed to get to the bottom of it. When I came in, I was obsessed with the UFO files, and you start getting really busy worrying about the economy and national security and things like that. But I've got 3 years left as vice president. I've not been able to spend enough time on this to really understand it, but I am going to. Trust me, I'm obsessed with this. I'm more curious than anybody, and I've got 3 years of this very tippy-top classification. He admitted that he wants to go explore Area 51, but hasn't been able to yet due to scheduling concerns. Vance's head-turning remarks on UAPs, which is a new way of saying UFO, comes weeks after former President Barack Obama casually claimed on a podcast that aliens are real. But I haven't seen them. They're not being kept at Area 51, he added. Later, Obama clarified that his belief aliens exist, but saw no evidence during my presidency that extraterrestrials have made contact with us. And we learned last week that, well, what was it? That they registered the domain aliens.gov. Is that what it was? I think it was something to that extent, because Trump said he's going to release information. All right. A couple things here. There's no real way to connect them, but partially recognized Horn of Africa nation, Somaliland, called for Firebrand Squad representative Ilhan Omar to be extradited after Vice President J.D. Vance claimed she committed immigration fraud, promising the White House would go after her. Deportation? Please, you're just sending the princess back to her kingdom. Extradition? Say the word. the Republic's official X account wrote in response. Somaliland has been a self-governing territory since 1991. However, most countries, including the U.S., don't formally recognize it as an independent country. Somali-born Omar has voiced opposition to the republic being recognized. Vance made the comments in a podcast interview, again with Benny Johnson, in a wide-ranging conversation, including her possible ties to widespread human services fraud in Minnesota, connected to some members of the Somali community. Quote, Ilhan Omar definitely committed immigration fraud against the United States of America, Vance said. What are the legal remedies now that we know she's committed immigration fraud? How do you go after her? How do you investigate her? How do you actually build a case to actually get some justice for the American people, he said. The vice president also called for a probe to uncover what Omar knew about the Minnesota fraud, claiming she'd been at the center of the scheme that had seen more than $1 billion siphoned from needy families and resulted in dozens of arrests, many of them Somali immigrants. Omar has been dogged by allegations over her first marriage to Ahmed Nur Said Almi, a UK national. Minneapolis-based Somali blogger and community leader Abdikam Osman told the Daily Mail back in 2020 that he knew Omar when the two were growing up in Minnesota and said she had introduced Almi as her brother from London to community members in the late 2000s. Omar would tell people at the time that her sibling was looking for papers referencing immigration documents such as a green card. Omar has consistently denied the allegations, which President Trump has also alluded to, calling them bigoted lies and accusing President Trump of being obsessed with her. So again, Somaliland saying deportation, please, you're just sending the princess back to her kingdom. Extradition, say the word. All right. So millions turned out throughout the country and throughout the world. Yes, I guess it was international for the No Kings rally. Did you happen to make it down? The No Kings rally, whether it was in Elmira, whether it was the Corning one. Well, crowds of people protested Saturday against the war in Iran and President Trump's actions in the No Kings rallies across the U.S. and in Europe. Minnesota took center stage in what organizers said were mass demonstrations involving millions of people. U.S. organizers had estimated that the first two rounds of No Kings rallies drew more than 5 million people in June and 7 million in October. On Saturday, they estimated that at least 8 million participants took part in more than 3,300 events worldwide. Thousands of people stood shoulder to shoulder on the Minnesota Capitol lawn, according to CBS News, and surrounding streets in St. Paul. Some held upside-down U.S. flags, historically a sign of distress. The event's headliner was Bruce Springsteen, who performed Streets of Minneapolis. He wrote the song in response to the fatal shooting of Renee Good and Alex Preddy by federal agents and in tribute to the thousands of Minnesotans who took to the street over the winter to protest the Trump administration's aggressive immigration enforcement. Before he launched into the song, Springsteen lamented Good and Pretty's death, but said people's continued pushback against U.S. Customs and immigration enforcement has given the rest of the country hope. Quote, your strength and your commitment told us that this was still America, and this reactionary nightmare and these invasions of American cities will not stand. The bill also included singer Joan Baez, actor Jane Fonda, Senator Bernie Sanders, and a long list of other activists, labor leaders, and elected officials. The rally at the Minnesota Capitol in St. Paul was designated the national flagship event in recognition of how the state, where federal agents fatally shot 2 people who were monitoring Trump's immigration crackdown, became an epicenter of resistance. St. Paul police shut down several streets around the area. No Kings organizers estimated more than 200,000 people attended the St. Paul rally Saturday, surpassing the number from the Women's March back in 2017. The protests were mostly peaceful. You ever notice how they say that? Mostly peaceful. But some arrests were reported. I guess in L.A. it got really bad. I think I have a story here. Something like 75 arrests were made in L.A. The Denver Police Department said on the social platform X that it declared an unlawful assembly and deployed smoke canisters after a small group of protesters blocked the road and did not leave when asked. Some threw the canisters back at police officers. At least 8 people were arrested, as was a 9th person later on who police said were throwing objects. People rallied from New York City, with almost 8.5 million residents in a solidly blue state, to Driggs, a town of fewer than 2,000 people in eastern Idaho. a state Mr. Trump carried with 66% of the vote back in 2024. Philadelphia's No Kings rally drew thousands of people downtown, shutting down roadways. Indivisible Chicago and the ACLU of Illinois, among others, organized a large rally in Chicago. Other rallies took place in Texas and Detroit, and at least 40 events were scheduled throughout the day in southeast Michigan. The White House dismissed the nationwide protest as the product of leftist funding networks with little real public support. Quote, the only people who care about these Trump derangement therapy sessions are the reporters who are paid to cover them, said White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson. The Trump administration's aggressive immigration enforcement, you get all that. So again, this is being reported by CBS. Yeah, a lot of professional signs. That is definitely sure. That's for sure. In Washington, hundreds marched past the Lincoln Memorial and into the National Mall, holding signs that read, "Put down the crown, clown," and "Regime change begins at home." Demonstrators rang bells, played drums, and chanted, "No Kings." All very original here. Bill Jarko was there from Seattle, joined by 6 people dressed as insects wearing tactical vests that said "lice," spoofing on ICE. What we provide is mockery to the king, Jarko said. It's about taking authoritarianism and making fun of it, which they hate. About 40,000 people marched in a No Kings event in San Diego, etc., etc. But they were also held around the world. Rallies were taking place in more than a dozen other countries, from Europe to Latin America to Australia. Countries with constitutional monarchies call the protests "No Tyrants." In Rome, thousands of people marched with defiant chants aimed at Premier Giorgia Meloni, whose conservative government saw its referendum for streamlining Italy's judiciary badly fail earlier this week amid criticism that it was a threat to the court's independence. Protesters waved banners protesting the Israeli and U.S. air attacks on Iran, calling for a world free from war. All right, there you go. Now, yeah, in L.A., well, we'll talk about it when we come back. I realize I'm running just a little bit late. Keep those comments, keep those waves coming in. We will be right back, frankly speaking, after this.
Hot tubs, hot tubs, hot tubs. With Easter coming, what better way to make every day better than with a Hesselson's hot tub? During these uncertain, stressful times, what better way to relieve tension and relax those achy muscles? During Easter week, free chemicals and free steps, and the new and innovative energy-efficient smart tub and hydraulic lift systems are just half price. Plus, huge, unprecedented discounts on 2025 models as factory reps will be on hand. Hesselson's Easter week hot tub sale is going on now through Saturday at 5 p.m. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
When a child is fighting a critical illness, one truth touches us all. Every child deserves a childhood. A wish sparks a ripple of hope that transforms communities far and wide. And when we grant wishes together, we create a movement of kindness, strength, and unity. Become a wish maker today and be part of a journey that truly changes lives.
Thanks for coming in to talk about Doug Jr.
Of course. 3rd grade is when I learned Liberty Mutual could save you hundreds by customizing your car insurance.
Why don't you come sit with us?
Oh, a little snug. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Alcoholics Anonymous. For more information, visit aa.org.
Happy Monday to you here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. Watching Fox News about AI and farmland. Elon Musk has the right idea to put it on space, or in space, I should say, instead of valuable farmland. Musk argues that space is the ultimate lowest cost location for AI training powered by abundant solar energy. Thank you very much. We were talking about the No Kings rally. Dozens of riders, including one with a dagger, were arrested Saturday after they refused to disperse during the chaotic No Kings rally in downtown LA. There was a total of 75 arrests following the protest. According to the New York Post, the unruly crowd was gathered outside the Metropolitan Detention Center where a few dozen DHS agents were working. They clashed with DHS and LAPD officers around 5:28 p.m. Officials said the rioters threw objects including rocks, bottles, and chunks of concrete at officers. 2 federal officers were struck by cement blocks and required medical treatment. About 200 people headed to the site to taunt officers, violently shaking metal gates set up to protect the complex and shouting profanities at officers. Out of the 75 arrested, 8 of those detained were juveniles. Videos from the scene also showed protesters waving Palestinian and other flags while throwing objects towards Department of Homeland Security agents. DHS personnel deployed tear gas as LAPD officers in riot gear arrived to control the situation. Protesters resisted arrest, creating chaotic scenes in the street outside the detention center. A woman dressed up as the Statue of Liberty in chains was handcuffed and hauled away with a smile on her face. LAPD officers seemed to be amused by the lady with tattoos painted in green and wearing a foam crown. The picture has since gone viral. The protester, who goes by some name on Instagram and describes herself as just trying to survive late-stage capitalism, has posted several rants attacking elected officials, including Karen Bass, whom she criticized for installing gates closing the downtown LA freeway off-ramps just hours before she was arrested. Those gates are not about our protection, they're about our control. Anyway, we don't need to know about the individuals there. Now, upstate New York, according to Syracuse.com, saw No Kings protests bring in tens of thousands of people to the street. Now, specifically, I don't think they were mentioning our area, but across the country, about 3,000 protests were held, attracting millions of people. Over 150 took place in New York, with 9 in central New York. Did anybody happen to attend or happen to drive by? Boy, one list after another. Tens of thousands of No Kings protesters marched through Manhattan decrying Trump. Why new and seasoned protesters alike say they came out to the No Kings rally across the country, according to CNN. And they, as you can imagine, they went around and interviewed people and got quotes from them. Organizers and police said the demonstrations were largely peaceful. 75 people were arrested, mostly for failure to disperse after a small group gathered outside of a federal building in downtown LA. When asked about the No Kings event, White House spokesperson Abigail Jackson told CNN the only people who care about these Trump derangement therapy sessions are the reporters who are paid to cover them, as we mentioned earlier. For demonstrators, democracy, the Trump administration's immigration crackdown, the high cost of living, and the war in Iran were top of mind. I'm not going to go through each individual person that they interviewed, but Jim Acosta, the former CNN anchor, praised and laughed at several anti-Trump protest signs while interviewing demonstrators in Washington, D.C. during a No Kings rally. During a segment of the Jim Acosta show, Acosta stopped to speak with protesters. Looking at one sign, Acosta said it was very funny and very clever. After reading the message, quote, "Okay, cholesterol, do your job." A sign appeared to joke about Trump suffering a fatal health event while in office. Another sign featured an image of Russian leader Vladimir Putin standing next to a much smaller figure of Trump. The sign also included a graphic reading, "The Epstein files aren't in Iran." The words, "I did this," were written on the sign with arrows pointing toward both the image and the graphic. While discussing the sign, Acosta remarked, The Epstein files aren't in Iran. That's very true, and many of the Epstein files have not been released. Millions of them have not been released, and so folks are wondering that too, but excellent signs. After calling the protesters nice people, he ended the exchange by telling them, have a great No King's Day. All right. But the New York Post editorial board, I think, they have a really interesting piece. It said, Saturday's No Kings protest, the usual resistance crowd, managed to again show their rage at President Trump and their fury at being out of power. They may even have succeeded in mobilizing Democrats for the midterm election. But they also broadcast the opposition's complete lack of any coherent political message. Forget about the waving of Soviet flags and tributes to anti-American dictators at various rallies. The entire No Kings conceit is a lie. Democrats against kings, they love them, as long as the king has a D after their name. Not long ago, Democrats applauded every abuse of executive power by President Barack Obama, from unconstitutional rewrites of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, to immigration amnesty for Dreamers and their parents, to unilaterally declaring the Senate to be in recess so he could back the National Labor Relations Board pack the National Labor Relations Board with union lackeys. Obama was not shy about autocratic behavior. He said at the time, I've got a pen and I've got a phone, vowing to sign executive orders and take executive actions and administrative actions. He did, and Democrats didn't complain but applauded it. Tom Friedman, the New York Times smug voice of liberal wisdom, fantasized of what Obama could achieve if we could just be in China for a day. Obama lost, often at the Supreme Court. That didn't stop him. Nor did it stop President Joe Biden, who became infamous for ignoring Supreme Court decisions. When the Supreme Court said that extending a COVID-era moratorium on evictions would be unconstitutional, Biden just did it anyway. The same when the Supremes told Biden he lacked the power to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student loan debt. Democrats didn't protest against Biden acting like a king. In fact, they encouraged him to go even further. Then there were the coronavirus restrictions imposed and extended by every Democratic governor. Blue states shutter businesses and lock kids out of school, when Americans, in fact, could have been conducting most normal activities safely. California Governor Gavin Newsom even banned religious worship in private homes. He'd eventually lose in the Supreme Court, but Democrats had no problem with it. So when it comes to no kings, Democrats aren't just accusing Trump, they're falsifying their own history. The truth is that Democrats cheer authoritarian behavior as long as they're the ones in charge. Let them back into power, and they'll prove it once again. All right. Now, we're going to talk about, boy, that got kind of messy on Friday. We know the Senate, passed that funding for DHS, but the House said, nope, we're not going to do it, sending it back to the Senate. But at that point, the Senate was already off and running on vacation. As a matter of fact, Lindsey Graham is getting criticized for going to Disney World. Graham was reportedly photographed having breakfast at Chef Mickey's at the Contemporary Resort at Disney World. The South Carolina senator explained that he was invited to a meeting in South Florida with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff to talk about the possibility of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. We're told Lindsey talked to the staff, who tucked him away in a back table. He went to the buffet line, much shorter than the TSA lines around the country, grabbed some grub, and chowed down. An eyewitness told us Lindsey was having a grand old time chatting with a younger woman and a kid at a table. Graham told TMZ, I was invited to a meeting in South Florida on Friday with Trump official Steve Witkoff to talk about the possibility of normalization between Saudi Arabia and Israel. I went to Orlando to meet friends after. I'm already back in South Carolina. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about the partial shutdown. Oh, I see some comments coming in. Keep them coming in. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
New York State is putting nearly $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. Lee Com Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
It's Chip and March at our Declaration of Deals event. Right now at Chilson Wilcox, save $10,000 on Ram 1500 during Truck Month. Choose from 25 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokees on the lot. Save $8,800. Or get 0% for 60 months or no payments for 90 days. Take advantage of loyalty and conquest offers, plus $2,000 in sell-down bonus cash. Declaration of Deals Championship and March event, now at Chilson Wilcox. Don't miss it. Hurry in today before the buzzer sounds.
Small businesses are the heart of America. Like you, these entrepreneurs started out with a dream and the drive to build a better life. If you have a small business idea to grow or challenge to face, you don't have to go it alone. Since 1964, SCORE has helped millions of entrepreneurs build their businesses. Today, they are the nation's largest nonprofit source of expert mentoring, resources, and education. Whether you're starting out, building back, or have worked at it for years, SCORE will match you with specialized mentors. Our thousands of volunteers provide the guidance and connections you need for free. Your success is waiting. SCORE is ready to help. Find a mentor today at SCORE.org.
Brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Some comments from viewers. Saw no kings here in Sebring. Impressive for such a small town. I just couldn't understand how a lot of the signs are calling Trump a pedophile. Is that because of his waffling on Epstein? Their TDS has no bounds. Yes, I believe that would be the reason they're probably throwing around that baseless name calling. That must be it. Ken writes in, all you need to do is look at the videos of the sheeple and the No Kings rallies, and unfortunately you have to come to the conclusion that they have mental issues. But instead of trying to help them, the Democrats are using their mental health problems to try and damage Trump and the Republicans. Thank you, Ken. So Friday on the Ingram angle, House Speaker Mike Johnson denied House Republicans were trying to gain an edge over their counterparts in the U.S. Senate. He was asked, what really ticked you off about what was handed to you this morning? Johnson said, well, a lot did, and I made that public. You know, in the process and the substance of what we were sent, let's make this very clear. House Republicans will have no part in reopening the border and stopping illegal immigration enforcement, and that's exactly what this piece of legislation attempts to do. It quite literally, on its face, brings to the dollar amount zero any funding for border security. Look, Chad said it right. It was the big issue in the 2024 election. 78 million Americans voted for President Donald Trump and the Republican Party to come in and seal the border, secure the border, and deport dangerous criminal illegal aliens. We have done that. The Democrats hate it. Brian, that's the whole thing here. They want the border reopened, and they want to protect dangerous criminal illegal aliens over American citizens. We can have no part of that. I'm not trying to roll the Senate. I would just correct what Chad said, that's just in one way. We're not trying to roll the Senate. We're trying to do the obvious, common sense, moral thing, and that is keep the government funded for 2 more months so we can sort out the differences between the party. As a matter of fact, who was it that said, here it is. To Speaker Johnson's point, the top Democrat on the House Immigration Committee wants to compensate illegal migrants and also punish American law enforcement officers for enforcing Congress's immigration laws. This is Representative Pramil Jayapal saying the people that have been inflicting this harm on migrants need to be prosecuted. They need to be brought before us, and they need to be held accountable for the trauma that they have created. And we are going to have to have form of reparation for the kids. Let me try that again. We are going to have some form of reparation for the kids and the families that have been traumatized through all of this. Jayapal's March 27th comments spotlight the apparent emotional horror that many progressives feel towards the enforcement of borders and citizenship rules. Progressive empathy for illegal migrants, including criminal migrants, has largely replaced the left-wing empathy for poorer citizens, such as individual workers in the 30s or many African Americans in the 60s. But this recent redirection of empathy from citizens towards illegal migrants is a fundamental attack on American society. So Representative Primal Jayapal believes that there needs to be some form of reparation for the kids and the families that have been traumatized through all of this. But Miranda Devine, do we have time? Yeah. Said there's nothing more infuriating to a frustrated air traveler delayed for hours by the Democrat shutdown than to see senators strolling smugly by with VIP escorts. The worst offender last week was Senate Majority Leader John Thune, who hightailed it out of D.C. on Friday morning, hours after stitching up a duplicitous 2 a.m. deal to end the shutdown by caving to Democrats' demands to defund ICE and border enforcement, at least for the time being. Elements of the Department of Homeland Security were funded in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act last year, but Thune's deal freezes out immigration enforcement and border security functions that are all important as we go to war against the world's largest sponsor of Islamic terrorism. He knew this would be unacceptable to the Republican base. In one fell swoop, Thune ceded the moral high ground to Democrats who now can blame Republicans for the shutdown. Breezing past the lines at Reagan National Airport with a grin for the cameras Friday, the glib Marlboro Man lookalike couldn't have been more pleased with himself. He controls the Senate, and it was his amendment that cut immigration enforcement funding in the dead of night, while most of his conference was asleep. I don't know what the House will do, he claimed, before jetting back home to South Dakota for 2 weeks. It didn't take long to find out. House Speaker Mike Johnson soon held a furious press conference denouncing Thune's deal. The gambit that was done last night is a joke, he said. I'm quite convinced that it can't be that every Senate Republican read the language of this bill. House Republicans will have no part in reopening the border and stopping illegal immigration enforcement. One House Republican described Thune's deal with the craftier Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer as unconditional surrender masquerading as a solution. Another called his Senate stablemates cowards who chickened out because they wanted to go home for 2 weeks. As Johnson said, Joe Biden's open border was the big issue of the 2024 election. 78 million Americans voted for President Donald J. Trump and the Republican Party to come in and seal the border and deport dangerous criminal illegal aliens. We have done that. The Democrats hate it. They want the border reopened, and they want to protect dangerous criminal illegal aliens over American citizens. We can have no part of that. He's dead right, of course, and his dismay echoed across the MAGA base all weekend. Just to drive home the insanity of Republicans joining Democrats in the single-minded determination to stop Trump deporting criminals with no right to be in the country. In the sanctuary city of New York last week, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg offered an absurdly lenient 6-month plea deal to a transgender illegal alien who raped a 14-year-old boy after following him into the bathroom. According to DHS, Nicole Alexandra Contreras Serres, 31, from Colombia, was let into our country by the Biden administration and then again released from jail following his arrest for armed robbery, assault with a dangerous weapon, and prostitution. This dangerous person should never have been here to commit such heinous crimes, and yet, like every other illegal alien predator who has hurt innocent Americans, he is protected and coddled by Democrats. Immigration should be a slam dunk moral and political advantage for Republicans at the ballot box this November, and yet they seem hell-bent on losing. Between the Senate GOP's sneaky 2 a.m. deal, its inability to pass Trump's pet Save America Election Integrity Act, and its refusal to even try to abolish the filibuster or somehow impose a price for Democrat obstruction, you have to assume there are Republican senators who are content for Democrats to win the midterms, impeach Trump, and derail his agenda. A few are generally Trump deranged. Others labor under the old-fashioned conceit that finding genteel common cause with Democrats is still possible. These are the fossils who still believe their former Senate pal, Joe Biden, was honest, a great dad, and a moderate. Either way, it's easier for these GOP senators to be in opposition because then they can pretend to fight Democrats while doing nothing. The Johnson-Thune showdown is just one sign of discord inside the Republican Party as we hurtle towards the midterm. Former counterterrorism advisor Joe Kent's determined campaign to undermine the rationale for the Iran war since he quit the Trump administration is deepening the rift on the right as Operation Epic Fury enters into its 5th week. Last week, Kent enraged Charlie Kirk's friends at Turning Point USA by claiming the FBI had stopped him from pursuing potential foreign links to Kirk's alleged assassin, Tyler Robinson, and expressed a willingness to testify for the defense if necessary. Meanwhile, influencer podcasters Tucker Carlson and Megyn Kelly are still going hammer and tongs with the likes of Ben Shapiro and Mark Levin over Israel. And last week, the once vaunted conservative conference CPAC was a washout, with no big draw cards, empty chairs as far as the eye could see, and persistent allegations that the organizers are a bunch of grifters. As per usual, Democrats remain united behind their insanely unpopular radical left policies. They show no signs of ending their reckless sabotage, which hurts government workers, inconveniences everyday Americans, and may even place us in danger. In fact, they're gleeful. After all, the shutdowns seem to work for them. Like the 2020 riots, they add to a general sense of chaos around the Trump administration, which ultimately damages Republicans. They gum up the routine work of government and place untold stresses and strains on the administration. But in one sense, the joke may end up on the Democrats. For one thing, the traveling public is seeing firsthand that every vile slur Democrats and their Antifa allies have thrown at ICE agents is a lie. Flying out of LaGuardia on Sunday morning was a breeze, thanks to the friendly, helpful ICE agents who had taken over almost all TSA roles. They were there to pleasantly check your boarding pass and efficiently help load your belongings into bins for the x-ray machine. Up to 75% of ICE agents are military veterans or former law enforcement, so their service makes Democrat slander against them all the more unforgivable. But it also means that they are supremely competent and trained to handle emergencies, not to mention withstand abuse with professional grace for all to see. They are a credit to their uniform. Now, White House border czar Tom Homan is talking about keeping some ICE agents on at airports to help the TSA, which is understaffed because nearly 500 unpaid agents have quit after enduring their third Democrat shutdown in 6 months. At a time of heightened security threats, Homan believes ICE provides an added layer of security to our airports, and there's the added bonus that the Democrats' favorite constituents, illegal aliens, will suffer the mild inconvenience of having to avoid flying for fear of being deported or, in Democrat fiction, shot and sent to a Florida gulag. This unity is death in politics, but so is the Democrat betrayal of America. So that's Miranda Divide on the cowardly GOP senators who ran home. We got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox.
It's championship in March at our Declaration of Deals event. Right now at Chilson Wilcox, save $10,000 on Ram 1500 during Truck Month. Choose for 25 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokees on the lot. Save $8,800. Or get 0% for 60 months or no payments for 90 days. Take advantage of loyalty and conquest offers, plus $2,000 in sell-down bonus cash. Declaration of Deals Championship in March event, now at Chilson Wilcox. Don't miss it. Hurry in today before the buzzer sounds.
Did you know that children growing up with poor air quality have smaller lungs and higher rates of asthma than children that grow up with good air quality? And unfortunately, poor communities have poor air quality. IQ Air Foundation is working to change this. Today, the IQ Air Foundation provides filtration technology to schools with poor air quality through our Clean Air for Kids program. Our goal is to help over 50,000 school children every year breathe over 90% cleaner air indoors, helping to level the playing field, reduce barriers to learning, reduce sick days, and increase test scores. Mitigating poor air quality is key to environmental justice. Help Clean Air for Kids reach more children at IQAirFoundation.org.
Happy Monday to you here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Ken writes in, obviously the most important thing to many of the senators is themselves, not the Americans that they are supposed to be working for. During my years in construction, if I just worked for myself instead of the company I was working for, I would have been fired. Very good point, Ken. Tom Homan was on CNN's State of the Union saying President Trump wants the entire Department of Homeland Security funded. He wants the government open and funded. And look, I've been on Capitol Hill talking to both sides, and bottom line, they want change in ICE tactics. They want changes and policies look the same as the laws that ICE follows today. The same laws about immigration enforcement that have been in place during the Clinton, Obama, and now the laws hasn't changed. And the thing we're talking about, I want to prevent ICE from doing their job. They can tell, and the thing is we're talking about is they want to prevent ICE from doing their job. They can say that they don't want to abolish ICE. I'm in the room. They want to change operations so we arrest less people. They're holding the department hostage because they don't like what ICE is doing and ICE enforcing the law enacted. If they don't like what ICE is doing, then change the law. That's your job. The laws are exactly the same. Let's talk about the masks. You don't see ICE wearing masks inside the airport because they're not on the street rushing criminals, where you have the agitators who cross the line and threaten ICE agents. Representative Don Bacon said, I would say that there was he's a Republican too. I would say there was overreach done by Border Patrol and ICE. I have a couple incidents in Omaha where people were in Omaha legally with legal work permits and were detained and were in the process of being deported until we intervened. And so we do need to rein in ICE and Border Patrol. I think we have new leadership. I've got to keep stressing this. The secretary has been fired. The main proponent of the overreach have been removed. I think Director Homan, for example, is doing a much more sound, balanced policy. So I think this is doable for the greatest country in the world to realize, yes, there's been overreach, but we've got to know that these are bad people here too, that we've got to take care of. And I just think that there's some common sense middle ground with our Democrat colleagues that should be able to open this up and get past this. Body cameras, wearing your IDs, not wearing masks, things like this, they make sense. Now, Senator Chris Van Hollen clashed with ABC News host John Carl as he was questioned over what Democrats have achieved in the Department of Homeland Security shutdown fight. The government has been in a partial shutdown for over 44 days. Carl asked Van Hollen about the bottom line. Noting Congress was on recess, the DHS was still not funded, and the Van Hollen has issued a statement the Republicans had finally relented on Friday. So, when the Senate passed that bill and there was a brief moment, it looked like, dawn had broken, you put out a statement saying that Republicans had, quote, finally relented. What did Democrats get out of this? Even if that passed, what did you get out of this DHS shutdown going on for well over a month? What have you gotten for it? Van Hollen said Democrats wanted to fully fund TSA and in turn get rid of the long lines at airports. However, he said ICE is a lawless operation. I guess that's confusing here, is you have fought and blocked the funding for the Department of Homeland Security because you object, as you have outlined, to what ICE has been doing, and you wanted to forge change. And yet the only thing that has been assured throughout all of this is that ICE already has its money. Because as you said, $75 billion passed in the budget bill last year. So you're holding up the entirety of the Department of Homeland Security because you object to ICE and you want changes to ICE. But through it all, ICE continues to have the money. Van Hollen accused Carl of making a false statement and saying that they were holding up DHS funding. We have said repeatedly, we should fund TSA, we should fund FEMA, we should fund the Coast Guard. We are not prepared to give ICE another $10 billion on top of the money they already have and are using in many of these lawless operations. That's when John Carl interjected, saying, in fighting over the additional $10 billion, you are holding up the rest of the Department of Homeland Security. Van Hollen said, we're not holding it back. See, they're not used to getting pushback by the media. You're holding up unless it doesn't include money for ICE. That's just a fact. They're not used to getting the tough questions. Now, there's a broadcast bias, according to an organization that studies media bias. Networks downplay illegal immigrant crimes even when women are murdered. On Thursday, March 19th, an 18-year-old college student at Loyola University in Chicago named Sheridan Gorman was allegedly shot dead by an illegal alien from Venezuela. The networks could barely touch the story or talk about the immigration status of the alleged shooter. CBS only spent 2 minutes, followed by ABC at 79 seconds, and NBC, at 23 seconds. Searching for it on PBS or NPR found nothing. PBS stations did waste 90 minutes on a documentary titled White with Fear about how Republicans use overtly racist tactics to win elections And one of those, they claimed, was highlighting violent crimes by illegal immigrants. Their primary example was conservatives reporting on the 2015 killing of Kate Steinle in San Francisco. The network hate reporting on crimes committed by illegal immigrants. Excuse me. They would insist it's atypical. I'm gonna keep sneezing here. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
With Steel Battery. Save up to $50 on select AK battery tools. Shop in-store or online.
It's great to catch up, Jamie. How's business?
Good. Are you up to speed with the new beneficial ownership reporting requirements?
Sort of. What's it about?
It's a new initiative to help fight crimes like money laundering, fraud, and drug trafficking. A lot of small businesses like ours just have to report some basic info to the federal government about the real people behind them.
Does that include my cafe?
There are some exemptions for certain companies, but don't worry. There's lots of guidance on the government's website about who needs to file. Check out fincen.gov/BOI. Filing is easy and free. It took me less than 20 minutes.
Looks like I do have to file. Thanks, Jamie. It's great having a supportive business community.
Reporting beneficial ownership information helps protect U.S. national security. Filing is quick, secure, and free. And it's the law. Learn more at fincen.gov/BO.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio. Moving right along here. Don't forget, coming up on the program, Wednesday, we'll be talking with our friend Doc Possum. You remember Doc Possum from the telethon, sending us that great music for Christmas tunes. And then on Friday, it's fan favorite former congressman, current Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski. So as we were talking about, the broadcast bias where networks downplay illegal immigrant crime even when women are murdered. In the midterm election year, journalists will try to keep immigration as a negative issue for Trump and the Republicans. They imply everything Trump touches turns into a disaster. They helpfully promoted Democrats claiming ICE might kill people when they helped out at the TSA and security at American airports. The news feels upside down now. The ICE is lawless and the illegal immigrants are all non-violent and law-abiding. Now, on the international front, 3,500 U.S. troops arrive in the Middle East on USS Tripoli as Iran issues a threat against the ground invasion. Along with the troops, the amphibious warship brought transport and strike fighter aircrafts as well as assault and tactical assets, with the Pentagon allegedly preparing for weeks of boots-on-the-ground operations in Iran. As the war in Iran continues to escalate, thousands of Marines are being prepped to deploy to the Middle East. The troop movement would fall short of a full-scale invasion, with roughly 10,000 American troops being considered for deployment to boost the already significant military presence in the Gulf region. Trump has not publicly acknowledged the Pentagon's proposal or whether he would approve any portion of the plans. The president has repeatedly suggested U.S. troops could be deployed to secure Iran's nuclear facilities and the Strait of Hormuz, a critical trade route currently under Tehran's control. The White House has said Trump has been given maximum optionality on how to proceed in Iran, with Secretary of State Marco Rubio maintaining that the U.S. can meet its objectives without any ground troops. Iranian Parliamentary Speaker Mohammad Bagher Jalab warned that any deployment of ground forces would be a clear escalation of the war and met with widespread retaliation. Gelbaf said Tehran's forces are waiting for the arrival of American troops on the ground to set them on fire and punish their regional partners forever, according to state media. The parliament speaker, who is believed to be among the top Iranian officials negotiating with mediators, suggested no peace talks would go forward as long as the U.S. continues to build up its forces in the region. He ultimately slammed a proposal for peace talks to be held in Pakistan as a cover for the looming American invasion. Now, according to the New York Times, there are now over 50,000 American troops in the Mideast. The arrival of 2,500 Marines and roughly 2,500 sailors is keeping the number of American troops in the region at roughly 10,000 more than usual. So 50,000 total. While it's still unclear just what the Marines from the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit will be charged with, U.S. officials say the president is weighing whether to try a large attack like venturing to seize an island or other ground as part of Mr. Trump's efforts to open the Strait of Hormuz. Now, usually there are around 40,000 American troops scattered around at bases and on ships at any time around the region. But that number has now reached more than 50,000, according to U.S. military officials. The number of troops no longer includes the 4,500 aboard the aircraft carrier USS Gerald Ford, however. That ship has been hobbled by constant mishaps, including a fire that broke out in the laundry. The Ford withdrew from the region on March 23rd and sailed to Crete. On Friday, it arrived in Croatia. It remains unclear where it's headed next. Last week, the Pentagon also ordered about 2,000 soldiers from the Army's 82nd Airborne Division to the Middle East to give Mr. Trump additional military options. Now, the Pentagon is prepping weeks-long ground ops in Iran, according to sources. U.S. officials told the Washington Post that the plans under discussion would stop short of a full-scale invasion and instead center on targeted ground missions involving a mix of special operation forces and conventional infantry. The report said the planning, underway for weeks, has included possible operations involving Karg Island, Iran's primary oil export hub, as well as raids on coastal positions near the Strait of Hormuz, targeting capabilities used to threaten freedom of navigation through the strategic waterway. It remained unclear Saturday whether President Trump would approve any of the options being prepared. White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt said the planning reflects standard military preparation, stating it's a job of the Pentagon to make preparation in order to give the commander-in-chief maximum optionality. It does not mean the president has made a decision. She warned earlier this week the regime should not miscalculate again, adding that if Tehran refuses to recognize that it has been defeated and abandoned its nuclear ambitions, President Trump is prepared to unleash, we'll say, heck. Let's take a short break and get ready to wrap up our number one. Stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking.
Don't forget to visit our Facebook page at Big Fox News. Watch news from the Twin Tiers and catch local events on Facebook.com/Big Fox News.
Looking for a meaningful day trip close to home? Visit the historic Elmira Prison Camp, one of the most significant Civil War sites in the North. Walk the grounds, stand where history happened, discover powerful stories of courage, sacrifice, and survival that shaped our nation. Whether you're a history enthusiast, a family looking to learn together, or simply exploring the Finger Lakes region, we offer an experience you won't forget. Plan your visit today at elmiracivilwar.org. Preserve, discover, remember.
I was diagnosed at 65.
37. Earlier than most.
Every 9 minutes, someone is diagnosed with Parkinson's disease.
And every one of them can turn to the American Parkinson Disease Association.
Visit apdaparkinson.org to learn more and show your support today.
Happy Monday to you. Here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. Comment from Ken: I'm sure President Trump is listening to the most informative conservative talk show in America, Frankly Speaking. So I will suggest this. Write an executive order stopping the payment to the House and Senate whenever the government is shut down. I think that's a great idea, Ken. I hope he is listening. Now, Trump says he could take the oil in Iran as he mulls over seizing Karg Island. To be honest with you, my favorite thing is to take the oil in Iran. But some stupid people back in the U.S. say, what are you doing that? Why are you doing that? But they're stupid people, he told the Financial Times. President Trump also didn't rule out an operation that would use U.S. force to seize Karg Island, a critical terminal where around 90% of Iran's oil exports are processed. Maybe we will take Karg Island, maybe we won't. We have a lot of options. It would also mean we had to be there on the island for a while. He claimed the U.S. could take Karg Island very easily, claiming, I don't think they have any defense. Earlier this month, the president boasted how U.S. airstrikes had obliterated every military target on the island, 1/3 the size of Manhattan. Iran has beefed up its defense of Karg Island by planting anti-armor mines surrounding it and on the shoreline. The regime also moved troops as it braces itself for potential U.S. ground invasion. An Israeli source previously warned a ground invasion would lead to American casualties. The hope is that they won't take the risk and will instead fire at the oil fields, but there's no way to know, they said to the Jerusalem Post. More than 3,500 U.S. troops have arrived in the Middle East, and Iran has said it's waiting for an attack. Mohammed Badger Ghalibaf said the enemy openly sends messages of negotiation and dialogue, but secretly is planning a ground attack. Washington is unaware that our men are waiting for American soldiers to enter on the ground so they can set them ablaze and punish their regional partners forever. Trump has paused attacks on Iran's energy infrastructure until April 6th. He claims ceasefire negotiations are doing extremely well, but stopped short of definitely saying a deal will be reached. I think we will make a deal with them, pretty sure, but it's possible we won't, he told reporters on Air Force One yesterday. You never know with Iran, because we negotiate with them and then we have to blow them up. Iran empathetically rejected the proposed 15-point ceasefire plan put forward by the U.S. last week. Trump also, well, we got to take a short break. I just realized hour number one's in the book. We still got a lot to talk about here. But yes, that was interesting about the funding. As you know, we were not necessarily a big fan of what the Senate proposed on Friday, what they passed, kind of questioning it. Why would the Republicans give up so much? So it was kind of, well, your thoughts on it, but I was kind of thought it was refreshing that the House denied it because I think, well, again, it did give Democrats, still does keep an upper hand. Now they can say they tried to open it, but Republicans are obstructionists. I just don't know what to think about Thune. Your thoughts? He just doesn't, he hasn't put forth the Save America Act. He caves to Democrats. Now, the Democrats didn't get everything they wanted, but enough that now they can, like I said, take the moral high ground and say they're trying to open the government. I just don't understand it. So your thoughts on Thune, your thoughts on the government shutdown, your thoughts on Iran. We do have a couple New York State issues that we're going to get to in the next hour as well. So stay with us. We will be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Hour number 2. Moments away. Hour number 1 now in the books. Stay with us.
New York State is putting nearly $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. Lee Com Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
And then the man didn't hire William Mattar and settled for a low-ball offer. Ooh. Ooh.
Bill, that's really not that scary.
Really? It gives me the chills. I mean, at William Mattar, we only handle motor vehicle accident cases, and they should have called us.
Dealing with big insurance doesn't have to be scary. Rideshare truck, motorcycle, car, only call William Mattar.
World Youth Clubs provides professional and technical assistance to all our affiliate clubs all around the world.
We already have 44 countries
countries that are behind us providing safe spaces for kids, but there are 160 other countries we'd like to reach out to. Yeah. Right, Rod? Exactly. We need you to help fund the World Youth Clubs and make their dream come true.
Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson's studio here on Market Street Corner. I realized I should have done my intro because it's hour number 2. But U.S. President Trump, that's a weird way of putting that, President Trump has vowed to hit Iran harder than ever before. As the U.S. declares the Iranian regime has been defeated and need to accept reality. The latest statement from the White House on Sunday evening declares that Iran have already been defeated and any further violence will be due to its inability to accept this. The warning said President Trump does not bluff. He is prepared to unleash heck, we'll say. The statement from the White House continued, there does not need to be any more death and destruction, but if Iran fails to accept the reality of the current moment, if they fail to understand that they have been defeated militarily and will continue to be, President Trump will ensure that they are hit harder than they have ever been hit before. Iran should not miscalculate again. Their last miscalculation cost them their senior leadership, their Navy, their Air Force, and their air defense system. Any violence beyond this point will be because the Iranian regime refused to understand that they have already been defeated and refused to come to a deal. Now, Iran says it's fighting a major world war and warns enemies won't escape without a lesson. Our enemy speaks publicly of negotiations while secretly planning a ground attack without realizing our forces are waiting for the Americans to enter. We are in the major world war and must prepare ourselves for a long, difficult, and complex path. Our launches continue, our missiles will not stop, and our determination has only grown stronger. He pointed to Iran-backed groups across the region as important parts of Iran's campaign. Hezbollah in Lebanon, he said, has become an important and effective part of the resistance, while allied forces in Iraq are fighting bravely. He also claimed that the Houthis in Yemen have breathed new life into the campaign. We will not allow our enemies to leave without demonstrating our power and turning this war into a lesson for any aggressor. Now, multiple Chinese vessels had to retreat at the Strait of Hormuz after Iran's warning and a rare ally move. Senator Tommy Tuberville discussed, well, we'll skip over that. At least 3 Chinese-linked vessels reportedly turned back abruptly after attempting to cross the Strait of Hormuz last Friday, signaling an unusual move in typically friendly Tehran-Beijing relations amid the ongoing regional crisis. 2 ships owned by China's state-run COSCO Shipping, the CSCL Indian Ocean and CSCL Arctic Ocean, as well as Hong Kong-owned Lotus Rising, made sudden U-turns near Larrick Island, according to ship tracking service Marine Traffic and research group FDD. The narrow channel has repeatedly been described as Iran's de facto toll booth, with Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy allowing passage only for authorized vessels. This was the first attempted outbound transit by major COSCO container ships since the start of the war, must be. Now, Hegseth, and boy, the media hates this. Hegseth, listen to this, injects combative Christianity into America's military. During his briefing on the Iran war last week, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth suggested that Americans take a knee and pray to Jesus for the success of U.S. forces in the Middle East. A few days later, he read out a sermon praying that wicked souls be delivered to the eternal damnation in the fight against Iran. The Defense Secretary has increasingly used his bully pulpit to promote his combative, controversial brand of Christianity. While the Pentagon says Hegseth is embracing America's proud history as a Christian nation, some experts and veterans worry that Hegseth's move to inject the military with more explicitly religious sentiment threatens to divide American forces. Matthew Taylor, a visiting scholar at Georgetown University's Berkeley Center for Religion, Peace, and World Affairs, said, I think it's extremely concerning the way he is operating. It's concerning to me as a Christian, and it's concerning to me as an American. The ideological consolidation of the military is something that we have historically not wanted. We want the military to be diverse. We want the military representative of the American people, he added. Hegseth, who has deployed to Iraq, and Afghanistan before becoming a Fox News host. And there's that hatred. Has presided over prayer services in the building led by controversial Christian pastors and revamped the military's chaplain corps and official Defense Department social media posts, often amplifying ultra-conservative Christian views. During press briefings on the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, Hegseth has frequently invoked his faith in referencing the conflict. On March 10th, one day after attending a dignified transfer at Dover Air Force Base in Delaware, he referenced Psalms 144, saying, "Blessed be the Lord, my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. He is my loving God and my fortress, my stronghold and my deliverer, my shield, in whom I take refuge." Service members' spiritual health is equally important as their physical and mental health, Hegseth said in a video message, complaining that previous administrations injected the chaplain corps with political correctness and secular humanism, changing and watering down the role's core function until they are viewed by many as nothing more than therapists. Prior to being tapped as Pentagon chief, Hegseth derided military efforts to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, labeling them as discriminatory ideologies that turn off the young, patriotic Christian men who have traditionally filled our ranks. Of the military's 1.3 million active duty troops, roughly 70% are Christians, according to the 2019 Defense Department data. There is such an anger at Pete Hegseth for having the audacity to pray. I'm not going to go through every quote that they have of his. Stephen Bucci, a visiting fellow at the Heritage Foundation think tank, said he believes there's much less concern about Hegseth's fervent religiosity than commentators seem to think. In the military, they start every event with a chaplain opening in prayer. They in particular try to be sensitive to people. They're not trying to evangelize somebody to their particular denomination or even to any faith. I think the idea of invoking the name of Jesus when Hegseth says pray for our troops, that's the way he prays. He's not dictating that anybody else pray like that. He's not trying to denigrate anybody else's faith or absence of faith. That's the way he feels about the troop. How about this? This will get you talking. Rob Schneider, you know the comedian Rob Schneider, he came out and he's been pretty supportive of Trump. He shared an iconic Kennedy quote on X over the weekend before urging his followers to consider a new path for the country. Ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. We must once again recommit ourselves to one nation under God, indivisible. Therefore, we must restore the military draft for our nation's young people. Schneider, who has no military record, proposed that each and every American at 18 years of age must serve 2 years of military service, either partially overseas or in country in a volunteer capacity. Being a citizen of the U.S. gives us unparalleled freedoms, opportunities that are the envy of the world. However, these freedoms that we cherish do not come without a cost. By protecting and preserving these freedoms, young people, regardless of race, creed, or religion, will be united in service to their country and, just as importantly, to each other. He recognized that many nations around the world require their young citizens to serve their country. Until recently, our nation did as well. We must once again recommit ourselves to one nation under God, indivisible. Therefore, we must restore the military draft for our nation's young people. Now, the United States last directed a military draft in 1972 during the Vietnam War. 6 months later, an active draft ended. Male citizens between the age of 18 and 25 are still required to register with the Selective Service System. Schneider mused that the draft would serve many purposes in our society. We would have all of our young men and women put into a rigorous physical training course that could use the rest of their lives. We would always have a standing army ready at all times, including the domestic problems like natural disasters. Being a citizen of the U.S. gives us unparalleled freedoms and opportunities that are the envy of the world. Unlike in today's universities, our young people will learn how truly great their country is and how unique and incredible are the freedoms that this nation bestows upon them. He noted that serving our country is a solemn reminder of the men and women before them who paid the last full measure of devotion so that we may enjoy these freedoms. Also very important, we would have in service every segment of our society represented so that our elected officials would be more hesitant and not cavalier about sending their sons and daughters off to a faraway war unless it was truly in our nation's interest. Interesting. All right. Now, did you see that Kash Patel had his, his personal email hacked into? Well, the cyber group behind the Kash Patel email hack issued a $50 million bounty threat on Trump and Netanyahu. An Iran-linked cyber group, formerly attributed to Iran's Minister of Intelligence and Security by the U.S. Department of Justice, has announced $50 million reward for those who can eliminate U.S. President Donald Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This declaration comes days after that same group, known as Handala Hack Team, published the bounty announcement on its website, framing it as a call to all freedom seekers and justice warriors around the world. The statement reads in part, "We, Handala Hack, hereby announce a $50 million reward for those heroes who can eliminate the main architects of oppression and corruption from the course of history." The announcement carries weight beyond rhetoric. The group has already demonstrated the operational reach to comprise one of America's most senior law enforcement officials. What makes the $50 million bounty declaration significant is less the figure itself and more the context surrounding it. The U.S. Department of Justice formally accused Iran's Ministry of Intelligence and Security of operating Handala in March of 2026, following the FBI seizure of 4 of the group's websites. That formal attribution transforms the bounty from the posturing of a rogue hacktivist collective to something more structurally serious, a state-adjacent threat issued by a group with confirmed ties to a foreign government's intelligence apparatus. All right. We've got to take a short break, a little bit more here about Iran. We do have some updates on New York State, so stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking after this.
New York State is putting nearly $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, the Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. LeCom Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
You can just keep watching and scrolling, and the world will still feel like it's falling apart.
Widespread misalignment. Highest hospitalization. Evacuation in the West.
Or you can take action by joining a movement that's creating real and lasting change instead. Partnering with communities around the globe to help uproot poverty and plant seeds of hope for a brighter tomorrow. Because at World Vision, we believe that no situation is hopeless. Join a movement that's changing the world for good.
Happy Monday to you here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Mark says, I don't think Thune is the right person to carry out Trump's plans for America. And caving to Democrats proves it. Good point, Mark. Comment from a different viewer. I was just watching Fox, and it was reported that Iran is allowing an additional 20 ships through the Strait. Oh, I did not hear that. That's great news. I've not heard that this morning. Now, the Pope says He said on Sunday that God rejects the prayers of world leaders who start wars and have hands full of blood. Leo made the forceful remarks in front of tens of thousands of Catholics faithfuls in St. Peter's Square on Palm Sunday. The pontiff described the conflict as atrocious and affirmed that Jesus cannot be used to justify any wars. This is our God, Jesus, King of Peace, who rejects war, whom no one can use to justify war. Jesus does not listen to the prayers of those who wage war, but rejects them, saying, even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Your hands are full of blood. That every round find it, while Leo did not call out any world leaders by name, some U.S. officials have used scripture to justify the military campaign against Iran, including Pentagon Chief Pete Hegseth. Let every round find its mark against the enemies of righteous and our great nation. Give them wisdom in every decision, endurance for the trial ahead, unbreakable unity, and overwhelming violence of action against those who deserve no mercy, Hegseth recently said. Leo, in his remarks on Sunday, referenced a Bible passage in which Jesus, about to be arrested ahead of his crucifixion, rebuked one of his followers for striking the person, arresting him with a sword. Jesus said Jesus did not arm himself or defend himself or fight any war. He revealed the gentle face of God, who always rejects violence. Rather than saving himself, he allowed himself to be nailed to the cross. Now, this is how military expert Stephen Collinson, I say sarcastically from CNN, said Trump's Iran war is at a fateful fork in the road. Trump's Iran war. How do you like that? 1 month in, President Trump's war in Iran is at a crossroads. A fast escalating conflict could widen further with the injection of U.S. ground troops and cause a worsening worldwide economic conflagration. Despite Trump's insistence that Iran and the U.S. are having productive contacts, there is no sign either side has the political dexterity to end the war. Iran has denied direct talks are taking place. America's ally, Israel, while expected to fall behind Trump if a ceasefire is reached, seems more reconciled to the prospect of a longer engagement. But the high cost of the showdown for the United States and the Islamic Republic also give reason to hope the war could be reined in before it gets even worse. Pakistan took the initiative on Sunday by leading a third-party attempt with Middle Eastern powers to look for a way out. The effort has a daunting mandate. Bridging antithetical endgame demands of an erratic U.S. president and Iranian regime defined by hatred of America. This war has already shown the U.S. and Israel have devastated Iran's air forces, navy, and much of its ability to pose existential threats. But they're so far failed to eradicate the revolutionary regime that has haunted both countries for decades. At issue now is whether anyone can build an off-ramp that might deprive either side of a knockout, but offer political and strategic carrots for each to claim vindication. Enough on that from CNN. Now, the watchdog group, what is this? A Mid-East-focused media watchdog said mainstream media outlets reportedly used the phrase war crime nearly 36 times in the first 3 weeks of the Iran conflict, but 88% of that usage was directed towards the U.S. or Israel. CAMERA, the Committee for Accuracy in Middle East Reporting and Analysis, and its research manager, David Littman, released a study counting 32 uses of the term war crime from BBC, CNN, NBC News, the New York Times, and the Washington Post. In his review, Littman asked readers to consider how the term war crime has been applied in reporting on the conflict, noting that simple internet searches return usages almost exclusively against the U.S. and Israel. CAMERA found 32 total applications of the phrase war crime during the first 3 weeks of the war. 0 were directed solely towards the actions of the Islamic Republic of Iran. 4, or 12%, were attributed to or directed at both sides. Cory Booker said over the weekend on Meet the Press, he said, I don't support this administration, period. This is Cory Booker, Spartacus. They've gotten us into what will be looked at as one of the greatest blunders, presidential blunders of our time. Remember, this president had stated objectives, none of which he is achieving right now, from the nuclear program all the way to, frankly, regime change. The regime is more extreme. They've shown an asymmetric ability to choke off the Strait of Hormuz and has caused a global oil shock. And for Americans at home, our costs continue to rise. This is after the president has cut people's health care and nutrition programs and Americans who have lost their lives. Oh, no, I'm sorry. And now, with over $25 billion to that has been sent to the war, over 300 people injured, 13 Americans who've lost their lives. This president is pushing us further and further into a conflict with no foreseeable off-ramp and thousands more troops moving in that region. And he still has not come to Congress for any kind of authorization for what is clearly not just a war, but the biggest military engagement we've had since the war in Afghanistan. This president is off the chain, and we are in a global crisis of his causing. So the Iran conflict is the greatest, quote, presidential blunder of our time. He also said Democrats, his own party, this is Cory Booker, have failed this moment. Host Kristen Welker said, Senator, let's talk about your new book. I have it right here. Stand. I'm going to read a little portion for everyone. You write, quote, we cannot cancel everyone who fails a purity test. We cannot exile those who don't align with our every belief, however passionately we hold it. Coalitions that are only composed of the already converted cannot change the country. If everyone in your coalition agrees with you on everything, your coalition is too small to make big change, and too small for what our democracy demands. Do you believe Democrats are making the mistake of shrinking their coalition with what you describe as purity test? So Cory Booker said, look, I'm proud of so many things that my Democrat colleagues are doing, but as a whole, our party has failed. This moment, it's why I've called for new leadership in America. I've called for a generational renewal because this left-right divide is killing our country. And our adversaries know it. They come on to our social media, try to whip up hate in America. That is one of our biggest crises. It is time for a new vision of our country that's far more uniting, that brings people together, doesn't deepen divides. I really believe this is at a time where we need new leadership, new moral imagination to pull our country together, because the challenges on the horizon aren't just this current crisis that Trump has caused. He shouldn't be the main character of our narrative right now. We have real challenges from new technologies like AI and robotics, new challenges that we need to more unity in our country, and a reminder that we are not each other's enemies. In fact, our ability to find common ground has always been our greatest hope. Chris Van Hollen, was on ABC's This Week, and he said, I don't think we should be providing more money for an illegal war of choice to a president who promised during the campaign that he would not drag America into new wars, especially in the Middle East. And a war that is now making us less, not more safe, and has already cost Americans lives and costing billions of dollars every day. Oil and gas prices are going up. So the president, who said he was going to focus on bringing down prices and ending foreign wars, is starting foreign wars along with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and prices are going through the roof. So no, we should not keep funding an illegal war of choice that's making us less safe. President Trump, I saw you quoting some of his earlier statements. You know, back more than 2 weeks ago, Donald Trump said we won this war. And so the question for President Trump, who's completely delusional, is if we won the war, why are they preparing to send thousands of more American troops and putting them in harm's way? Oh, on Politico, did you see what Politico did? They had to pull an anti-Semitic cartoon of a blood-covered Trump and Netanyahu. That's Politico, was forced to yank a controversial anti-Semitic cartoon depicting a blood-soaked President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu with when it had a lot of anti-Semitic stereotypes. The cartoon, published Friday by the outlet, which is owned by the German media group Axel Springer, shows the world leaders sitting on a rickety ship alongside a handful of top GOP officials wearing blood-stained Jewish prayer shawls and yarmulkes. The boat features a sign that reads Amalek, the Hebrew word for enemy, and is careening off a cliff toward the direction of Iran. The cartoon, titled Ship of Neocons, was published by the outlet and its weekly carousel of work from cartoonists across the country and political spectrum, and taken down Saturday over accusations of anti-Semitism. We removed a cartoon by independent cartoonist Sean Delonis from this week's gallery after weighing comments from readers that it did not meet our standards. Sharp arguments and provocative imagery in political cartoons are within bounds. Images that could be reasonably interpreted to rely on ethnic stereotypes or employing tropes have been involved in historically hateful ways are not. All right, we got to take a short break. A lot more to cover here. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox.
New York State is putting nearly $60 million towards improving key roadways across the southern tier.
Many older homes are still at risk for exposing residents to high levels of lead.
The Nani Hood Parent Resource Center once again brought the community together for its annual Halloween parade.
Around the southern tier, Finger Lake stands out for its scenery and wine scene. This year's dry drought brought some positives to the crop. Lecom Center is looking for fans to show up and show out.
Hot tubs, hot tubs. With Easter coming, what better way to make every day better than with a Hesselson's hot tub? During these uncertain, stressful times, what better way to relieve tension and relax those achy muscles? During Easter week, free chemicals and free steps, and the new and innovative energy-efficient smart top and hydraulic lift systems are just half price. Plus, huge, unprecedented discounts on 2025 models as factory reps will be on hand. Hesselson's Easter week hot tub sale is going on now through Saturday at 5 p.m. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselson's.
Sophia A., grade 4, absent, because transportation was absent.
Julio M., grade 6, absent, because Wi-Fi was absent.
Maria J., grade 12, absent, because childcare for siblings was absent.
Jacob O., grade 12, absent, because housing was absent.
Aisha S.,
Olivia H.,
Darren L.,
Cole W.,
Preston L., absent.
absent,
absent.
because healthcare, anti-bullying,
Mental health support was absent.
We're calling roll on the 15 million absent students.
Their reasons why are very real.
And yet the solution is a present, caring adult to help them along their path.
When communities and schools is present, 99% of our students are present and ready to learn.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning to you. If a Democrat president was doing what President Trump is accomplishing, the country would be thrilled. My Democrat friends actually admit that. So stop the hatred and hypocrisy and celebrate the good, especially this Holy Week. Good show, Frank. Have a blessed Easter, everyone. Thank you very much. Hope you have a very blessed Easter as well. Stephen A. Smith tore into both Republicans and Democrats for lacking clear leadership, suggesting the country is facing a political vacuum while bluntly asking, where's the leadership? Look at the Republican Party right now. It's Trump. You know what I said the other week on my show? I said, y'all know he's leaving in 2028, right? Unless he circumvents the 22nd Amendment and runs for a third term, he's leaving. J.D. Vance, you ain't Trump. Don't think you are. Marco Rubio, thank God he doesn't try to be. The rest of these people fawning over him in such embarrassing fashion, you ain't going to be him. They're taking this position that Trump was wrong to go after Iran or what have you. But practically every president before him would complain about Iran and how Iran needed to be dealt with. But then all of a sudden he does it and it's a big problem. Now, I'm not saying that he's handled it entirely correctly. Please don't get me wrong, because he hasn't. But the flip side to it is that you have got a lot of darn nerve to be in the face of the American people saying for numerous administrations Iran is a problem, they have to be dealt with, and then this man deals with them, and then all of a sudden you're complaining about him. Now it really doesn't make sense. He also said the Democrats, my goodness, please find someone who can lead. Gavin Newsom, he's being known more for trolling Trump on his podcast or with other interviews than what he's actually doing in the state of California. They think that leadership because they don't have it. They think that's leadership because they don't have it. All right. Now, speaking of Vance and Marco Rubio, it didn't sound like CPAC was that successful this year, the Conservative Political Action Conference. According to a poll of the 1,600 attendees, At the Conservative Political Action Conference held this past week, an overwhelming 96% said they approve of the job Trump is doing as president. An additional 94% agree with the statement that Trump has been the best president in my lifetime. Support for Trump's policies agenda were similarly strong. The survey found that 91% of respondents backed tariffs aimed at reducing the trade deficit and boosting American workers and businesses. Another 89% support Trump's military action in Iran and to halt their nuclear program, while 92% approve of the arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. Other leading Republicans also received high marks among respondents. Vice President J.D. Vance earned a 92% approval rating, while House Speaker Mike Johnson received 84%. Senate Majority Leader John Thune trailed with just 57% of support from conservatives. Within Trump's cabinet, Secretary of State Marco Rubio ranked as the most popular, with 42% naming him their favorite. He was followed by Pete Hegseth, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Scott Bessent, and Tulsi Gabbard. The poll also offered an early glimpse at the GOP's future. J.D. Vance, and this is why we mention it, won the presidential straw poll, but Marco Rubio did close some ground. Vance led the 2026 Conservative Political Action Conference straw poll Saturday with 53% support, but Rubio's 35% showing marked a sharp rise that significantly narrowed what had been a much wider gap between the two men in last year's survey. Last year, Vance actually posted a stronger 61%, and Rubio languished at just 3%. So now, again, for presidential support, J.D. Vance receiving 53%, Rubio just 35%. Rubio's rise in the CPAC vote comes with his growing visibility on foreign policy and national security issues, including the Iran war, elevating his standing among conservative voters. The widening attention on both men reflects an emerging two-lane contest for the party's future. One anchored by Vance's populist alignment with Trump, and another driven by Rubio's expanding policy profile. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, once seen as a top heir apparent, drew just 2%, interesting, support in the same straw poll. Ted Cruz, Pete Hegseth, Rand Paul, and Tulsi Gabbard were all tied at 1%. The CPAC result is not an isolated data point, but part of a broader pattern of early positioning ahead of the 2028 race, where Vance has consistently appeared near the top of the initial polling and candidates' watch list. So there you go. Vance telling Fox News last fall, I would say that I've thought about what that moment might look like after the midterm elections. Excuse me. But also, whenever I think about it, I try to put it out of my head and remind myself the American people elected me to do a job right now, and my job is to do it. Trump ruled out running as Vance's vice president to gain a third term in office, though he has mused about potential 2028 face-off against AOC. Now, when we return, Newt Gingrich weighed in on the Democrat Party. We are going to talk a little bit here about New York updates. I have something here about the SAVE Act as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. Stay with us.
You've been putting back a few, and a few becomes a few too many. For a moment, you think about calling for a ride. Nah, you live nearby. What's the worst that can happen? You get pulled over, your insurance goes up, you lose your license, you total your car, you kill someone.
Don't forget our Facebook page at Big Fox News. Watch news from the Twin Tiers and catch local events on Facebook.com/Big Fox News.
It's Championship in March at our Declaration of Deals event. Right now at Chilson Wilcox, save $10,000 on Ram 1500 during Truck Month. Choose from 25 2025 Jeep Grand Cherokees on the lot. Save $8,800. Or get 0% for 60 months or no payments for 90 days. Take advantage of loyalty and conquest offers, plus $2,000 in sell-down bonus cash. Declaration of Deals Championship in March event, now at Chilson Wilcox. Don't miss it. Hurry in today before the buzzer sounds.
When I have an asthma attack, I feel scared. Sometimes my parents have to take me to the hospital. I feel like a fish with no water.
You know how to react to their asthma attacks. Here's how to prevent them. Because even one attack is one too many.
Happy Monday to you. Here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 of an inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Newt Gingrich says, despite all the current polling and the constant comments of the professional analyst class, the Democrats have the biggest problems going into the 2026 election. People know that they have unpopular values. Their big government socialist models of taxing, spending, and bureaucracy don't work. The Democrats' key institutions have long histories of performance failures, and the dominance of the hard left in the Democratic Party forces Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries into painfully tone-deaf positions. It all represents a huge burden, weakening the likelihood of a major Democratic victory this fall. Consider some of the burdens the Democrats will be carrying as they campaign this summer and fall. As America's New Majority Project polling showed, Americans are deeply opposed to tax increases. 77% oppose tax increases for the middle class specifically. Yeah, every single Democrat in the House and Senate voted against tax cuts and in favor of the largest tax increase in history. This simple, verifiable fact will loom large in September and October. Americans are deeply opposed to letting males in girls' locker rooms or crowding out women in sports. Americans are overwhelmingly opposed to government taking control of children without involving their parents. For some reason, transgenderism is a major value in the Democrat Party, and Democrats are overwhelmingly tied to policies and values that Americans reject by about 4-1. Democrats feel ideologically and psychologically compelled to favor protecting illegal immigrants over controlling the border. They favor criminals over strengthening the police, and they support more open borders over the unique success the Trump administration has had in controlling the border. As Americans celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence, at least 40% of Democrats report that they are ashamed of America. 40% of Democrats say that they're ashamed of America. They regard the Founding Fathers as bad people who owned slaves, discriminated against women, and stole the country from Native Americans. This lack of patriotic solidarity shows itself in votes involving Venezuela, Iran, and even the sinking of boats carrying drugs into America. With the exception of Pennsylvania Democrat Senator John Fetterman, elected Democrats are virtually unanimous in putting partisanship above patriotism and seeking to undermine President Trump overseas rather than to help America's position. The Democrats are also weakened by personality and corruption. In personality contest, you could hardly help the Republicans more than by matching Schumer up against Senate Leader John Thune. Schumer comes across as old, tired, and out of touch. He has spent so many years in Washington, he speaks an insider language that simply does not reach most Americans. The current fight over funding the Department of Homeland Security is a case study in Democrats' tone deafness about the concerns of the American people. To some Democrat left-wing strategists isolated in Washington, D.C., it may seem clever and courageous to cut off funding for the TSA to put pressure on Trump. However, the 13-year veteran of The Apprentice in the White House sees chaos and long lines at airports as a threat to Democrats, not Republicans. Democrats feel ideologically and psychologically compelled to, okay, we already mentioned that. Millions of traveling Americans are finding their lives made more difficult by Senate Democrats. That the Democrats don't understand that suggests that they are so disconnected that they could become a long-term minority party for a generation or more. The Republicans' fate in failing to understand how big a change President Franklin D. Roosevelt represented in 1932. Separately, for 94 years, the Democrats have been the party of big government, bureaucracy, and interest groups who get their money from government. As government has grown larger, the opportunities for fraud and theft have grown greater. Minnesota represents that kind of performance failure that will weaken the Democrats. One estimate suggests that $400 billion a year is stolen from the federal government, adding up to more than $4 trillion over the next decade. Numbers this size numb most of us because they're too big to comprehend. The Minnesota scandal certainly qualifies, $9 billion to $16 billion, but the mechanics of theft were simple enough that most Americans understand it. The more investigators dig into Democrat Governor Tim Walz's administration and its refusal to listen to whistleblowers, and more government appears complicit with the corruption, the greater the vulnerabilities for Democrats. The fact that Walz was the Democrats' vice presidential nominee just adds to Democrats' vulnerabilities as a party of favoritism and corruption. The combination of these facts could implode the Democrat Party if the Republicans can run a smart, aggressive campaign of contrast and choice in 2026. The current fight over funding the Department of Homeland Security is a case study in Democrats' tone deafness about the concerns of the American people. In campaign planning, you must distinguish between what people say pre-campaign, when the liberal media has spent months communicating its version of reality, and how they vote after they have been communicated with during a campaign. Campaigns matter, and people do change their minds and attitudes. I suspect 2026 is going to be this kind of year. That was Newt Gingrich. Comment from a viewer. Good morning, Franco. Good morning. The Republican problem is that they are just independent enough to coalesce to get things pushed through, whereas Democrats can and do. Thank you very much. Now, John Lott Jr., this actually came out on Friday, but I wanted to mention it to you. Senate Democrats are fighting tooth and nail against the SAVE Act, arguing that requiring Americans to prove their identity with a photo ID when they go to the polls to vote, even when the ID itself is given away for free, prevents eligible voters from casting ballots. They contend proving citizenship would make voting harder for millions who lack ready access to birth certificates or passports, supposedly disenfranchising Black and Hispanic Americans. Yet democracies all over the globe, both in the wealthy West and the developing world, enforce similar rules. Every country in Africa, for example, requires government-issued identification to vote, and 51 out of 54 African nations demand would-be voters to actively submit proof of citizenship to register. Mexico and all 12 South American countries mandate government-issued photo ID to vote and verify the citizenship of each registered voter. Mexico's rules, similar to those proposed in the SAVE Act, requires voters to prove their citizenship with an original birth certificate issued by a civil registry, a naturalization certificate, or a Mexican passport. Our southern neighbor even requires a thumb stain when casting a ballot to prevent double voting. All 47 European countries require government-issued photo identification at the polls. Virtually all of them check voters' citizenship against national databases, though France requires them to submit documentation too. And the United Kingdom, Cyprus, and Ireland reserve the right to demand documents when citizenship is in doubt. Why the tight security? To combat widespread vote fraud. Mexico enacted major reforms in 1991 after election fraud became endemic there. The government required biometric photo voter IDs, banned absentee ballots, and mandated in-person registration. And despite the tighter rules, turnout rose. In the next three presidential elections, average participation reached 68% of eligible voters, up from 59% in the prior three. As confidence in the system increased, so did participation. Similar in Northern Ireland, decades of intense conflict fueled aggressive electoral tactics. Observers described voter fraud as widespread and systemic. Both conservative and Labour governments acted. In 1985, under Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher, the United Kingdom began requiring voters to show identification at the polls, but that failed to solve the problem. Investigators found that individuals could easily forge medical cards that accepted ID or obtain them fraudulently to cast illegitimate votes. IRA Belfast commanders subsequently admitted to complex scams that had volunteers donning disguises, wigs, different clothes, glasses to vote multiple times, and running taxis to transport fraudulent voters between polling stations. By 2002, a UK Electoral Commission survey found that 64% of voters believed fraud in some areas was significant enough to change election outcomes. Only 10% disagreed. That year, the Labour government strengthened ID requirements, introducing harder-to-forge identification, and implemented rules to prevent multiple registrations, and voter confidence rose. Representative Henry Cooler, the only House Democrat supporting the SAVE Act, says he does so because I believe in a fundamental principle. American citizens should decide American elections. 7 states already require proof of citizenship, such as birth certificate, passport, tribal documentation, or naturalization papers to register to vote, similar to the SAVE Act's proposed rules. And polls show strong support for voter ID requirements among all voters, both Democrat and Republican. Even though Democrats like Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer claiming it would impose Jim Crow-style restrictions on voting, minority voters don't seem to see any danger. Significant majorities of black Americans, 76%, and Hispanic Americans, 82%, favor voter ID. The bottom line is this: voter ID is not controversial in this country, Harry Etten recently noted, nor does it spark controversy virtually anywhere else. Yet, despite voters' own preferences, only one Democrat House member and one possible Senate Democrat, Pennsylvania's John Fetterman, support the SAVE Act. Unless 7 more of the state's 47 Democrats step forward, their filibuster will kill the bill. But if voter ID and proof of citizenship destroy democracy, Democrats would have to label virtually every other democracy in the world as undemocratic. On that note, let's take a short break. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us.
When you spend 100 years building chainsaws, you get really good at building chainsaws. So when Steel built the mower, we built the chainsaw mowers. New blade, same bloodline.
Having a safe home is essential to many aspects of our lives. From a sense of community and safety, to physical and mental health, to economic security and independence. Most homes in our communities are not accessible and are not designed to accommodate the changes that come with age, including the risk of falling. The Older Adults Home Modification Program helps reduce the risk of falls, improves safety, and increases accessibility and independence. Through this program, Rebuilding Together works with older adults to provide no-cost preventative home repairs so our neighbors can safely age in place in the homes and communities they love. To learn more, visit rebuildingtogether.org/safeathome.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam, brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. How did you just pronounce Henry Cooler's last name? Cooler is how I said it. I don't know. I've only ever seen it typed out, so I don't know how you actually say it. Rick writes in, good morning, Frank. Good morning, Rick. Old Dollar Don. At least his signature isn't on the $100 bills. Looks like a good turnout as expected for the No Kings March. We were down on Market Street to get a bite and drove by the rally. Awesome turnout in Corning. I hit the horn for them and let them know how I felt out the window. Great response. Good people out there Saturday. By the way, where does Trump and Johnson get off on saying the left doesn't want to sign a Homeland Security bill because they want murderers, nuts, convicted criminals, and people from insane asylums crossing the border? Why would they want that when they already have Trump? Well, back to war, ICE overlooked TSA workers, lack of direction and leadership, high prices, farms folding under financial pressure, lies, cheating, foot soldiers en route, fraud, narcissism, greed, and nausea. Oh, joy. Comment from a different viewer. Frankly, I drove down Market Street early Saturday afternoon. There was significantly less people than I expected for No King's Day at Centerway Square. Mostly the same full-time activist faces and rainbow hair people. I was even surprised by the lack of local TV news coverage, barely mentioned during the evening and following morning. All right. Thank you for your comments. Hey, this is by Beth Shapiro. New Yorkers can't afford to grow old here. And they go and give a history of some of the people that just cannot afford to live in New York State any longer. When government provides this foundation, philanthropy can invest in what comes next. Our organization has already demonstrated what innovation is possible, delivering additional meals, fresh produce, and shopping assistance to those who would otherwise go without. Mamdani has spoken about building a more affordable city that works for everyone. I invite him to come meet some of the New Yorkers we serve and see for himself the challenges of aging with dignity here in New York. Because in the wealthiest city in the world, growing old should never mean going hungry. Now, they asked a question. We talked about this last week with Bruce Blakeman, but a Democrat challenging Assembly Minority Leader Ed Roth filed paperwork last month to participate in New York's new public campaign financing system, which provides generous amounts of taxpayer money to candidates who raise funds from small donors. The challenger's form was missing required information like her address and which office she was seeking. But 4 days after the due date, a staffer at the Public Campaign Finance Board filed out that information on her behalf, and she was certified to join the program. That initial treatment stands in stark contrast to how the board is treating New York's top Republican. Democrats, who have a 4-3 majority on the board, are planning to vote next Tuesday to kick Bruce Blakeman, the Nassau County executive and likely GOP nominee for governor, out of the program for a less obvious paperwork problem. After this story was published, Democrats said they would also be a vote to remove the raw challenger from the program. Blakeman filed to participate in the public financing system when he launched his campaign in December and received a letter saying he was certified. That same week, the PCFB approved new rules to address a 2025 law that has governors and lieutenant governors run as a ticket in primaries. One section said the candidate now needs to jointly apply for certification on a form written by the board. That form still doesn't exist, however, and instructions for the new rules are absent from a handbook published last week. Since Blakeman's campaign didn't fill out by the February deadline, Democrats say he should be booted from the program. That could deal a $7 million blow to his campaign. The board sent a letter to Democrat Governor Kathy Hochul earlier this year offering to help her enroll in the program. Though she ultimately declined to participate, it never reached out to Blakeman to let him know it claims that his claim it was certified wasn't yet actually accurate. Columbia law professor Richard Briffault said he could see a case for temporarily withholding payments to Blakeman until he submits the new form identifying his running mate. But kicking him out of the program would be pretty extreme. This seems to be a little too cute, frankly. This seems to me very stupid that they're doing anything like this because it would undermine the notion that this is an above-board, nonpartisan process. Democrats on the board say Blakeman's team should have followed the rules that were being debated and found a way to comply. If Lieutenant Governor candidate Todd Hood has filed to apply for public financing himself, they would have merged the two candidates' filings and there'd be no issue. This is simple. The law requires both candidates on a joint gubernatorial ticket to submit the paperwork necessary to participate in the public matching funds program. Blakeman filed, Hood did not. Democrat Director Brian Keegan said the board was prepared to accept more than one filing format, but every valid routine required participation from both candidates. But the process stands in contrast with how the board has operated in the past when it has gone out of its way to ensure candidates are properly registered. State Senator George Borrello said, "This year I submitted the paperwork, I sent it in, and I had forgotten to initial all the locations. They contacted me immediately and made sure I knew it was incorrect, which gave me time to actually do the paperwork again, get it notarized again, and overnight it to them in time. The public financing system debuted in 2024. It therefore doesn't yet have the reputation of its 38-year-old New York City counterpart, which, despite complaints about overzealousness in audits, has rarely been accused of partisan bias. But if the new board's most prominent vote to date is to target the head of the Republican ticket for a fixable paperwork error it doesn't flag in advance, the GOP won't shy away from casting doubt about its impartiality. If on an issue as minor as this, a major party candidate for governor is substantially hurt, I'd have to say it's weaponized. Conservative Party Chair Gerald Kaiser said. Once it happens, you wonder if it's going to become a regular thing. We have to take a short break and then wrap up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Get your comments in.
When you're online, don't forget to visit our Facebook page at Big Fox News. Catch up on news from the Twin Tiers and hear about local events. All on Facebook.com/Big Fox News.
My name is Abigail Lee, and I'm here with my friend, William Matar.
Nice to see you, Abigail. I love your outfit.
And I love yours. Blue's your color.
We're teaming up to help raise money for Build Promise, because when someone goes down, it's not time to give up. It's time to give.
Please donate now at BuiltPromise.com. Any amount helps.
Help those in need at BuildPromise.com. That's BuildPromise.com.
Alcoholics Anonymous. For more information, visit aa.org.
Happy Monday to you here in Elmira, looking at warm temperatures again in the 60s expected throughout the afternoon. Chance for some shower activity to start to move on through here throughout the day. Remember, our average high is 50 degrees for this time of the year. We'll be looking at some breezy conditions here across the area, really gusty expected here for your Tuesday afternoon, and a chance for a little shy of 1/4 inch of rain through 7 p.m. on Tuesday. Here's a look at your extended unsettled forecast.
The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. No King's Day is July 4th. That's the day I celebrate. Thank you very much. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. I watched live from Studio 6B last week. Host Damon Roberts mentioned that an invitation was given to New York governor candidate Bruce Blakeman to appear on Studio 6B. Mr. Blakeman issued a statement indicating he was too busy to do an interview. Many New Yorkers do not even know who Bruce Blakeman is. I'm wondering why a candidate running for governor would issue such a statement when he has no base and many New Yorkers do not even know who Mr. Blakeman is. That's a very fair question. Comment from a different viewer. The No Kings March reminds me of fish in a fishbowl. The fish are carrying signs that say ban water. We hate water. You know, if they succeed, it'll be ugly at best. You try to tell them the truth, but yet they can't hear you. Thank you very much. And Ken writes in, key points in the Democrat playbook: divide and conquer, bring in new voters dependent on the Democrats, launder money into their pockets through fraud and abuse of taxpayer dollars, vote as a group or you're out, funnel money into big pharma to get political donations, line their pockets with insider training, propagandize the sheeple with lies and misinformation, keep elections open to fraud and abuse. Thank you, Ken. And Jack writes in, I wish the left would stop concentrating so much on one man and get back to concentrating on how to get our country in order. Let's face it, they're not going to drive him out with protests. It's just a huge waste of time. Thank you, Jack. Appreciate that. Oh, by the way, did you see Mom Donnie had to skip a Bernie Sanders rally, a Tax the Rich rally, as there's some tension between him and Governor Hochul, so he didn't want to be seen with Bernie on the tax of the rich. And a major Wall Street powerhouse is weighing a southern escape as New York City's new mayor talks about soaking big businesses with taxes. Apollo Global Management, a $900 billion asset manager, is plotting a second U.S. headquarters in the Sun Belt just as Mayor Ron Mamdani pushes to hike taxes on deep-pocketed corporations. Wow. Now that, one other thing before we go, we are out of time. Did you see Kid Rock sent social media into a tailspin after posting footage of a military helicopter hovering just yards away from his Tennessee estate dubbed the Southern White House? But while the chopper provided the spectacle, Rock provided the sting, using the moment to deliver a brutal clapback at the Golden State on his X account over the weekend. This is a level of respect that blank for brains, governor of California, will never know. Taking a direct shot at Gavin Newsom. God bless America and all those who have made the ultimate sacrifice to defend it. That does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Thanks for all the waves. Thanks for all the comments. Great discussion. Really appreciate it. And join us every weekday morning starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning bright and early. I look forward to it already.
Hot tubs, hot tubs, hot tubs. With Easter coming, what better way to make every day better than with a Hesselsen's hot tub? During these uncertain, stressful times, what better way to relieve tension and relax those achy muscles? During Easter week, free chemicals and free steps, and the new and innovative energy-efficient smart top and hydraulic lift systems are just half price. Plus, huge, unprecedented discounts on 2025 models as factory reps will be on hand. Hesselsen's Easter week hot tub sale is going on now through Saturday at 5 p.m. After 70 years, it's still fun to poke in the corners at Hesselsen's.